invention of the lawnmower in 1830. This little lawnmower invention has enabled the British to invent sports, basically. If a sport is played on a grass surface, the British probably invented it. Sports to a higher form of evolution, really. Take lawn bowls, for example. Lawn bowls were certainly played by the Greeks in perhaps a bit of a shot put sort of format, and certainly by the Romans. Rolling coins, rolling stones trying to get to a target. It was partly so popular throughout the empire because it was an easy way of gambling. Stones or lumps of iron. The game of balls, French pétanque, is more or less the format that had been around for all those centuries. It's been played on shallow water like skimming stones, and even on the ice, curling we know it as in the Winter Olympics. Those stones made to curve by polishing the ice really quickly with a broom to smooth the way you want it to go. Now, balls or bowls, the English introduced bias. You wouldn't usually think that bias was a good thing, but it introduces a whole other level of skill if the ball, the stone, is heavier on one side than the other. It travels in an arc towards the jack, the kitty, the little ball, the target, the kitty. This does mean that you might want to keep a quiver, a portfolio of balls of different biases that you can use on different occasions for specific shots. But if you ask me, the groundsman is the real star of lawn bowls. It's sometimes said that the Scottish invented flat greens that they developed with these lawn mowers, and the English developed the bias and the rules, and adding rules to a game develops the sport. Jactu lapidum, as they say in Latin, we're all after the jack. Sometimes in bowls it's fun to play a spider. A spider game is when you place the jack in the centre of the bowling green and all the players make a ring around the outside, all facing inwards, and no, they don't do the okey-cokey, they bowl their bowls and try and get as close to the jack as possible. You can have too much bias. Wick is when the bowl curves too far out into someone else's strip of the bowling green before it curls back in towards the jack. Bowls is quite a relaxing pursuit. You might want to know about the grass used. It's of Tiff Dwarf Couch variety, bred especially as a hybrid. Just how you used to see cricket bowlers rubbing the cricket ball against their groin and leaving a red strip. They would really polish one side of that leather as hard and enthusiastically as they could so that they could get some spin on it as it's flying through the air and fool that batsman as it bounces. It's really much the same with the wood. The lawn bowl is called wood. And up until the invention of plastics in the 1950s, even through the 1960s and into the 1970s, all bowls were made of wood. Now, what is this wood made of that you roll down the ditch, the gully, the trench or the bin? Rinks, the strip of bowling green that you're playing on, understandably called also the green, but more confusingly also called the blue. Becoming particularly popular from the late 1800s onwards. Yes, from then people used to polish their woods, their balls. But even with plastic powder balls, you still have to put in that maintenance. Of course, without the bias on the balls, you've just got a game of plant your ball in between the person on the mat rolling and the jack, and you've just got to knock them out the way. There's little finesse to this game, and it's going to get messy. You can't have too many games next to each other on the same bit of green. The bias enables you to get around that blocking ball. Or is that a wood blocker? Pegging, we need to know about, and finger peg, and thumb peg. Sending a ball with your thumb on the biased side is the thumb peg. Sending the ball with the thumb on the non-biased side is the finger peg. And your wood needs oiling, linseed oil, on a nice ebony hardwood. It's quite a pleasant maintenance task. But do you think the nods of appreciation, the civilised applause, the polite handshakes and genteel gestures of today's English game existed in 5,000 years ago in Egypt, playing something similar to marbles next to the cockfighting and dogfighting? No, No, of course not. A British lawyer saw fit to outlaw kicking, hacking and tripping on the Crown Green. Bowling alleys like Skittles tended to be in pubs and taverns and were really quite unsavoury, productive of very evil consequences, promoting a pernicious spirit in the idle citizens. Personally, I think it was just a means of expression for that. Drinking and gambling. People are just as bad playing spoof. Oh, how many of 3 little stones am I holding in each of my 2 hands? The trick is to have little stones and hide them between your finger after the other person has guessed, and giving you a clue on what your guess should be, high or low. Around in England since 1300, bowling was made illegal because people weren't practising archery as they should. Archery had to be the dominant sport, so men could always be called upon to defend merry old England and invade Scotland if necessary. Be up to the head is a phrase that's used in bowls. After battles plundering Europe, it was known that the barbarians would relax after a battle, with the game strikingly familiar to us. Agree on a target object, they would sever the heads of their opponents and roll them ever so gently across the terrain, aiming to get them as close as possible. Marbles, quoits, skittles, petanque, boccer and bowls all have one thing in common which makes them more primitive and natural games. There's no element, no club, no sling, no cue, bat, racket or bow to distance the man from the ball. It's just stone throwing, jack to lapidum. In the raw, it needed the British to invent all the complexities and difficulties of golf and croquet, billiards, snooker, archery and darts. In 1739, stone throwing still wasn't much different to today's welly wangling. Plenty of bias on that. Rubber. Croydon, 11 miles from the farm to London. He bet his mates he could make it there in 500 throws. Lignum vitae, living wood bowls, the heaviest timber on earth, was still a long way away. But just that century of play made the trees virtually extinct. That perverse romance of lignum vitae, living wood being deceased, as a dodo, has been replaced with the less romantic Bakelite plastic resin composition of the composition Henselite, Jackalite, Phenolite, Vitalite, Drakelite, Tyrolite, or some other phenol formaldehyde powder name. 3.5 pounds each in weight on average. Love has become chemical. Now, the story goes that there were some dukes playing bowls, and the one duke put in a fast one, and he smashed the superior duke's bowl in half. He ran off and cut off the balustrade post finial, the round ball on top of his staircase, and returned with it and replaced the duke's bowl, and the game continued. The duke found that this gave him an advantage. He could make his way around balls. This is the story about how a bias came about, because there was a little bit of stick still sticking out from the staircase post finial. I want to check this story and check the banister. If the Duke of Suffolk or Gaul in Yorkshire watching, please leave comments in the below. And what does your banister look like now, please? Brass or pewter weights would be put into the one side after that, to make it bend in that quirky way that it does. Shakespeare wrote of it in Richard II, but the meaner sort of people weren't allowed to play. Perhaps I should leave you with Sir Francis Drake and the Spanish Armada. He was playing at Plymouth a rubber of bowls when the Great Armada came, but he said, "They must wait their turn, good souls," and he stooped and finished the game. Sir Francis Drake would have been playing with 2 balls, but a bit like religious relics. There are quite a few bowling clubs with a pair of William Drake balls on display, proudly, even as far as New Zealand. But it is a patriotic image that conjures up true British grit and sang-froid. Sir Francis was indeed a brave nutter. Sang-froid, French for blood and cold. Chill or cool blood, French.